it's your girl, Hope Your TV Movie Bestie, and I watch good shit. And I just got done watching How to Make a Killing, which is available to rent on Prime Video. Now, this was excellent. I love this movie. Okay, so it stars Glenn Powell, who plays Beckett Redfellow, and he comes from a very wealthy family. So his mother, she grew up a Redfellow, and they had a lot of money, but when she was really young, she met a guy, she ended up getting pregnant by him, and it was not a good look for the family. So they're like, look, you can get rid of this baby, or you can have this baby and get disowned. So she was in love with this guy. She said, I choose to have the baby. So she did. And they disowned her. So she grew up having not her family's money, but having their name. As she grew up, her grandfather, he put her child, who is Beckett, into his will. And basically it says that once other Redfellows die, if he's still living, he will inherit the entire fortune, which is $28 billion. And so that's in the will. But in the meantime, there is nothing they can do. So his mother, she tries to give him a good life, the best life that she can. She sends him to private school. He takes lessons, does all the things that she had herself as a child. During this time, he meets a young girl named Julia, who he likes and he befriends. But his mother, she ends up getting very sick and she eventually ends up dying. Once she dies, he goes straight to his family, the Redfellows, and he is like, my mom died. I'm part of this family, and at some point I'm going to inherit all this money, and like, how can y'all help me? And they're like, we are so sorry. There's nothing we can do. He never even meets his family. Like, they send him a letter at the gate. He goes on about his life. He loses touch with Julia, like never sees her again. He has kind of a rough life for a while. He's in and out of foster homes. Eventually, one of his relatives dies and he hears about it and he goes to the funeral. At the funeral, he meets one of his uncles and he tells his uncle, like, hey, I'm your nephew, and my mom was whoever. And so he's like, whoa, like, yeah, I remember when your mom got pregnant, they put her out the family and all this. And he said, wow, I should have tried to find you, and I'm so sorry. And he says, look, why don't you come and work for me? Like, what are you doing with your life? And really doing nothing. And so he's like, yeah, come work for me. He owns like a finance company, and he puts him on and he starts making a lot of money and stuff. He starts thinking about his family and how they have all this money, but he doesn't know any of them. And he thinks to himself, at some point, I'm going to make a ton of money, once all these people die. And so he starts looking them up, and they're all thriving. They're doing well. None of them are going to die anytime soon. They're all younger than him. And this movie begs the question of, what would you do for 28 billion? Apparently kill. So he gets this idea of so there are 7 people in line in front of him that would have to die before he could get this 28 billion. And he said, what if I killed him? And it's just an idea, of course. And he goes and meets one of them. And this guy's like an idiot. And he is on a boat and he just kills him. He ties an anchor around his foot. This guy is drunk on drugs, so he's totally out of it. He ties an anchor around his foot and just pushes him off the boat, and he's dead. And there's no kind of investigation. They're just oh, it's a freak accident. And he thought, wow, that was easy. And so he basically starts killing these people. Now, he has to get more creative because they're not all dummies on drugs and stuff. He starts killing them. It's working. And then right about the second person, so the FBI gets involved because this is a very prominent, very wealthy family. And even though seemingly unrelated events, it is still 2 people that died. The second guy that died, because he goes to the funerals. Y'all, I'm like, what are you doing at the funeral? Get away from these people. But he goes to the funeral, and actually with the second guy, this guy had a girlfriend and he likes this girl. And so they start kind of like talking, but he dies and he sees her at the funeral and he's like, hey, and she's like, hey. And so the FBI is involved and they're questioning him and they're like, are you related to these people? Like, do you have an inheritance coming? And he's like, nope. He's like, well, I am, I guess, related. He's like, but I don't even know these people. Like, I didn't grow up with them. They kind of disowned my mom. And so I'm sure I don't have any kind of inheritance coming. And they're like, okay. He kind of skates away from that. And he continues meeting his family members, killing them. What's happening in his life is that he's really advancing in the finance world. He's making really great money. He's getting to know his uncle. He really likes his uncle. Eventually, he runs back into the second guy he kills. He runs into his ex-girlfriend, and she's like, you know what? I was going to break up with that dude that weekend. I know I'm supposed to be sad and everything that he died. I mean, I'm not happy that he died. I'm not sad either. It's like, okay. So they start dating and things are going really well. And eventually it gets to the part where the next person in line is his uncle. And he's like, I love my uncle. He's been good to me. I've got a good life. I've got a woman I love. They are now like at the point where they are engaged, and he's like, I can just stop this. Like, 28 billion, but I make good money and I'm okay. So he decides to just not pursue it. Well, his uncle ends up dying. Like, not that he killed him. His uncle has a heart attack and just dies. Now, another thing that's happening is Julia has come back into his life. So he meets Julia, and remember, he's always like had a thing for Julia. And so initially, before he's gotten to this point where he's engaged to this other girl, Julia, he is like, hey, what's up? He kind of like asks her out on a date, and she's like, no, I'm getting married. And so he's like, oh, okay, cool. So he thinks that's over. So that's why he, him and this girl, they pursue each other and they start dating and all this. And then Julia comes back around. And Julia's like, hey, I got something for you. And so she hands him this envelope. And in it is pictures of him with all these people that have died. And it's like right before they've all died. And so he's like, oh, shit. What do you want? And she's like, all right, here's the truth. I thought my husband was very wealthy. He's been lying to me for years. He's not. We're broke. We don't have nothing. And I want you to keep killing these people because you're going to get all this money. And she's like, I want $300,000 by 5 o'clock today, or I will send this letter to your girlfriend. And he's like, well, the FBI is kind of pursuing me anyway, so I'm probably going to get caught. And she's like, and yet here you still are. And so she's like, get me my money. Send it to my husband. He'll meet you at the bank, or your girlfriend gets this envelope. And so he's just like, shit. Okay. So he goes to the bank. He meets up with her husband, gives him the money. He's like, all right, y'all can get out of my life now. And so her husband is like, she ain't gonna, like, she finna leave me. She not getting this money for us. She getting this money for her. And then she gonna be out. He's like, all right, well, that's y'all's thing. Back to him and his girlfriend. They're, doing well. He's like, okay, I think everything is good. He gets a letter in the mail. And guess who it's from? His grandfather, who he's never met. This is the same guy who disowned his mother when she was pregnant. So he calls up his girlfriend and he's like, oh my gosh, I got a letter from my grandfather. And she's like, the one you've never talked to or met before? And he's like, yeah, he's invited me to the house. And she's like, okay, so who cares? Like, you don't talk to him. You don't want anything to do with him. And he's like, well, I know, but like, why is he inviting me? Like, it must be something. And she's like, well, when is it? And he says, it's Friday night. And she says, Friday night? And he's like, yeah. And she said, Friday night is our engagement party. And he's like, oh shit. Well, I might not get another chance to do this. And she's like, are you serious? Like, we're getting married and this is our engagement party. Like, you can't miss this. And so he's like, you're right. He goes, of course. So he's thinking in his mind, like, I'm just going to be a little bit late. You know, it'll be fine. So he goes, he meets his grandfather, and his grandfather is just like, you know, how's your life been? And he's like, you know, it's good. You know, I'm getting married and I got a good job. And he's like, okay, cool. So he said, you know what? Let me show you something. So he takes him in like the gun room, because these people always have a gun room. And he takes him in there and he's showing him these like muskets and stuff. And so he shows him this gun that he says his great-great-grandfather in World War I. And so he's like, here, try it out. So he's taking in, like, aiming it and stuff. You know, it's like a shotgun. So he's aiming it. And then he's like, try to shoot right here on him. And so he's like, what? And he's like, yeah, see if you can shoot. See what kind of shot you are. And he's like, no, I should get out of here because I've got to go. I'm getting married and I've got to get to my engagement party. So I'm just going to leave. He's like, okay, well, it was nice to meet you. And I'm thinking, nothing about this is right. Like, what was the whole point in him coming? Like, So anyways, he goes to leave and he can't leave. The doors are locked and he's like, what's going on? So he goes in this one room and he looks under the door and he sees like shadows of feet moving by. Well, all of a sudden he's like, he gets a weird feeling and so he locks the door. And then the next thing you know, here comes his grandfather trying to get in the door. He got the shotgun, boom, blow the whole door off the frame. And I'm like, the granddaddy trying to kill him? So I guess the granddaddy said, look, I know you've been killing everybody in our family and I know you came here for me, but I'm going to take you out. And so they battle it out. They're running through the house and shooting. And Beckett, he finally gets a bow and arrow and he shoots and kills his grandfather. Now this one was actually in self-defense. But as you know, now everybody is gone and he's up for this $28 billion. So it's all on the news. You know, the police come because he's injured. He has gotten like shot in his arm and police come, the whole thing. And then he goes to his engagement party, which of course is over by now. And so his fiance is like, what is going on? Like, why did you go there? You're hiding something. I always feel like you're hiding something. Tell me the truth. Instead of coming clean, he tells her about what happened at his grandfather's house, how his grandfather tried to kill him and he's in the will and all. She's like, so you're rich now? Like, and he's like, mm-hmm. And they move into the house. They get inducted into like New York society. And at his induction ceremony, FBI shows up and they take him in a side room and they're like, we're placing you under arrest. And he's like, what? For what? And they say, you're under arrest for the murder of Julia's husband. And he's like, what? I ain't kill her husband. Now, he's been killing a lot of people, but he didn't kill him. And so there's a whole trial. Now, this part was never fully clear to me as to what happened. Like, I guess he killed himself because he was like, Julia was going to take the money and leave him. And he wrote a suicide note, but that doesn't come out. All that comes out is that he's dead. And the murder weapon was a letter opener that Beckett had been using when he signed the check over to this guy when they were at the bank earlier. And it has his fingerprints all over it. And it's pretty much an open and shut case. And I also thought, what kind of lawyer did he have? Because, dude, you had $28 billion. You should have had the best lawyer in town. Like, You should have resurrected a guy from the O.J. Simpson trial. I can't think of his name right now. You should have the best of the best. As he goes down for this crime. And of course, Julia, she testifies against him, saying her and Beckett were having an affair and he was always in love with her, and he gets life in prison. And then he actually gets the death penalty on death row. He's in jail. Julia comes to him and she says, I found a note that my husband wrote the day he died. And so he's like, wait, what? There's a note? Like, you have to turn it in because that could exonerate me. And he's like, they're literally going to kill me. Like, I'm not just in jail. I'm going to die. And he's like, you don't want that to happen to me, right? And she's like, well. And so he's like, please, like, what do you want? I'll give you anything. And she's like, you're in jail on death row. What do you have to offer me? And he was like, I don't know, but you have to want something because you're here. And so she says, sign everything over to me. And then I'll release the letter. And he's like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. You want to die or you want to have a poor life? And so he's just like, okay. So he signs everything over to her. And it is literally hours before his execution. And she has not released this letter. He's talking to a priest. And that's how the movie opens, where he is telling the priest this whole story of how he ended up here. It is now like minutes to him getting executed. And the priest is like, so about that letter, and you seem pretty calm. And he said, well, I thought Julia would show up in the letter. The priest is like, yeah. He starts reading from the Bible. And a few minutes later, the guards come in and they're like, y'all ain't gonna believe this shit. And she has released the letter and he is exonerated. He gets out, and I thought, surely he is due a settlement or something, because he was on death row about to die for something he didn't do. But anyway, so he gets out, he's released, and here is his fiance. She's waiting outside, and he's like, oh my gosh. She had been in the trial for a little while, and then when it was seeming like, yeah, he really did this, she stopped coming to court. And so he's like, oh my gosh, you're here. And she hands him like a necklace that he gave her, and then she drives off. And he's like, all right, damn. He's just standing there, and he turns around, and I knew it. There's Julia. She's waiting in her Rolls Royce, and he gets in the car, and they start drinking champagne, and they ride off to the house. And it's like, because he says this story is a tragedy. And he said, so I know it looks like it ended well because I got off. And he's like, but I did lose the woman I loved. And, you know, now I have Julia. And I was like, well, I don't know. You also have $28 billion. And I think I could get over my ex-fiance, and I could learn to be happy with Julia for $28 billion. But anyway, so that's how the movie goes off. I thought it was great. A little bit like satire at times, but it was a great movie. Definitely a good, enjoyable watch. So if you're looking for something to watch this weekend, like I said, it's available to rent or buy on Prime, and you can check that out. You know the drill. Like, subscribe, follow. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you've seen this movie or if you're interested in it. And I will see you on the next movie, the next video. Bye, besties.